My name is Lucy. Thank you so much for your amazing presentation. Let us know what's the project involve, how you built up. I'm wondering, you got a amount of donation to build up this clinic,
Hmm.
but how you can get the healthcare workers,
Hmm.
who will pay them?
Sure, of course. So that's, I think, an issue that we are still working through. And so, um, like you mentioned, there is a lot of the donations that have been contributing to the creation of the clinic and getting the medications and stuff like that. And so that has supported, I guess, that portion of the clinic. We The services at the clinic charge a small fee for patients, which if patients want to buy medications from other clinics, they typically have an increase of like they upcharge that, and so we try to have no increase in pay. This is completely for the community, and so if a community member or patient is unable to pay, we'll also cover that. And so in terms of refilling our stock of medications, that is one of the ways that we do that. In terms of the healthcare workers, right now on staff, we have just one nurse. And so myself and Samuel, we donate a portion of our personal money to fund the salary of the the healthcare worker, as well as someone who is able to clean the facilities and a security guard. And so those are out of our own pockets. However, we also have a couple other employees on staff, and so we have, I guess, I am not completely plugged into this, but I believe a lab tester, as well as some researchers and an HIV, um, um, I think,
Yes.
testing reader.
Yeah.
So they are actually funded by the Ministry of Health, and they come to our clinic to do work, but that is given by the government, either by the government or the researchers are here under a separate grant with a different organization, but they're paid by them. And so they are here to just collect data about some of the healthcare outcomes on the within the clinic. But yeah, that's where some of the funding goes. We haven't completely solved the challenge of being able to create a more sustainable model. We've created some, I think, ideas and things like that, but we haven't been able to implement them very well yet. Um, and then, yeah, did that answer your question, Lucy?
Yeah, kind of. Yeah, yeah. So you did very good job, and I know it's not very easy to go through every part. Yeah, especially for the clinic regarding the healthcare
Yeah.
issues a lot. Yeah, thank you for your answer.
Yeah, of course. I also received a question in the chat from Jin. Do you use solar power for the clinics? So yes, we have a combination of using solar power as well as I guess just regular electricity. I'm not sure how the electricity comes from. There is I think a power plant on the island, um, but we do use a combination of solar and I guess traditional power. Then I can share my GoFundMe towards the end of this presentation. Is that okay, Jim?
Yeah, and it's also on our website. So the flyer in our events area, in
Oh,
that
I
flyer,
will.
Okay,
I
perfect.
posted your GoFundMe link there.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
But also please share in this chat room in case people want it. Yeah.
Sure, I can send that afterwards.
Mhm. Okay.
Are there any other questions?
There's a question in chat room just now.
Oh,
Like,
in
how
chat.
did you start
Sure.
it? Where's your idea?
Oh,
Well,
perfect. Yeah. I had forgotten to mention this. And I think I was going to mention a little later, but in terms of how I got connected to this location in the first place, so I had already done a lot of traveling over the last like couple years before going to Kenya, and then during my travels, COVID had hit, and I was kind of stuck at home, and so used that time. Like initially, everyone was quarantined, and I initially used that time to study for the MCAT, which is the entrance exam to get into medical school. So I spent a lot of time doing that. And then after that, because I had planned to travel for much longer, or do volunteer work for a lot longer, I didn't really have any options, and so I decided to use an online platform called Workaway. And I can type that in the Workaway. Um, an online platform called Workaway. And so hosts from around the world, they have projects that they can make postings for. And then volunteers can find these postings and get in touch with the host. And the host can often provide either accommodations and or food. And in the posting, it describes a lot of the projects that the hosts need to help with. And so when you go on Workaway, most often the most common postings are for helping teach English at a school, or teaching English to like a host children, or like working on a farm, or working at a hostel, or things like this. And so when I went on Workaway, I wanted to be able to use some of my experience with um, in global health to contribute to something that could help with like the local with local healthcare outcomes. And so I found Samuel's page, and so Samuel um, had outlined as the Sagrema Foundation. Here are some of the like our priorities. We want to create a healthcare clinic. We want to have clean water. We have empowerment for women. We have like farming and all these kind of things. And so there was a lot of projects to choose from, and he had mentioned that we could also come up with our own projects. Um, I think within the posting, I had imagined that there was a clinic already, and so when I arrived in Kenya, um, I had found that they didn't really have clinic services, and so I think the clinic that he was referring to was one of the ones that was more far away where we could help on. But I think, like he had mentioned, that there was a big need for a clinic within this space. And so I wanted to use some of my fundraising experience to, I think, help alleviate that. And so that's where that had come from. Um, does that answer your question, Phoebe? Yes. Okay, perfect. And then Velma had asked a question. Besides women needing maternity care, are girls in schools, do they receive education like boys? Are the students educated in crafts and works that can build their communities? And so, yes, the girls and boys are all, they all go to the same schools. They all are able to receive the same kind of education. I think within a lot of Kenya communities, especially in more rural Kenya, there is more of a male dominant household center. And so women oftentimes, even if they go through school and do all these things, they often still stay at home. I think that has changed a lot over the last few years, where now women who are like going attending schools, they're able to go on to university, and from university get a job doing things. And so Samuel's two oldest daughters are, one is now a nurse, and the other is I don't remember what she's doing, but she's in Nairobi, which is the capital. Um, and so she is doing other work. And then so they are able to receive the same kind of education. Students are also, you asked about crafts and work that can build their communities. I would say that there are like art classes and things like that, but especially on the island, there aren't that many resources. So there's not that much resource to educate or give or provide students with the opportunities to really get engaged with like things like art or things like that. But if that's something that students really want to do, that they are, I think, able to go to. There are, I guess, like community centers that are founded by other organizations, and sometimes they do have those educational opportunities as well. I think because Kenya, how rural Mafangano Island is, a lot of especially sons learn from their fathers how to like build and how to do I guess, field work and things like that. And so in terms of building their communities, a lot of especially boys work on creating like their own like gardens and farms, and then some of the mothers will teach their daughters, especially on like how to work on the farms or work in the fields. But I would say growing up, all the children, either boys and girls, they will both contribute also to learning how to do those kind of things. And so even though it's not really taught in the schools, that's I think part of the rural community culture, and so they do learn those kind of things as well. Does that answer your question, Velma? Okay. Are there any further questions about this? Okay, so I think I will go back in time a little bit more. And so I'll talk a little bit about some of the other travels that I was very fortunate to be able to do. And this was during my third year in undergraduate, as well as fourth year. And then after graduating, I traveled for an extensive amount of time as well. Um, and then, so I have some, I guess, pictures. Let me try to find those ones. Okay. And so I had mentioned that I had already done some fundraising and during college, and like as I was planning this trip to travel to a lot of different countries in the world. And I think for me, when like all this traveling started in the the summer after my second year and into my third year, in which I went to Tanzania to help with some. I was an intern at a local health clinic as well, and a lot of the people who lived in my apartment happened to be European. So they I wanted to be able to see them afterwards. And so I knew I was doing a study abroad program my next year during my third year. And that program is called Semester at Sea, in which we studied on a ship for one semester. And like we had class every day on the ship, but we would stop in 10 different countries around the world. And then during those times, where we stopped in each country, we experienced the culture and interact with local people and do, I guess, whatever we wanted during those times. But we did have classes that had field excursions and field opportunities to apply what we had learned in the classroom to our travels. And so one of the courses that I had taken was called Medicine Society. And that gave me the opportunity to, anytime I went to a new country during semester at sea, we would try to experience our travels from the perspective and looking at things through the lens of how the society has influenced like medicine or healthcare or wellness or just overall health outcomes within the country. And I think that was a very fascinating thing to think about anytime I enter a new country. And so after that experience, like I mentioned before, wanted to visit some of those friends in Europe. And so I had the opportunity to travel to all the European countries after semester at sea for the next summer. And that I think really built this passion for wanting to be able to experience as many cultures and foods and meet as many different people as possible. And I guess break down any stereotypes that I think Western media often paints by talking to local people and meeting them and hearing their stories. And I think one of the most important things that I had learned was that fundamentally everyone is good and that everyone has the same passions and hopes and dreams as anyone else in the world. And I think oftentimes certain people are painted with a dark connotation that is hard to rub off with from just listening to, I guess, media. And so that was one of my, I think, missions going into traveling, was to kind of paint my own picture of people through interactions and things like that. And so when I came back home for my fourth and final year at the University of Virginia, I knew I wanted to do a lot more traveling afterwards. And so I created another GoFundMe campaign, which is actually the same GoFundMe platform that I've been using for the Sagrema Foundation. And through using that, all the money I raised from that was purely for volunteer purposes. And like when I would visit a country, if I visited a hospital, I would do a donation while I was volunteering there. And so the the funds for my personal travels were all I had earned that individually. And I can talk a little bit more about how I did that as well. But this picture that you see here, we have these two boys on the top right, and on the bottom left is this man. And so these pictures were taken in Yemen, and Yemen, I think, is a country that is often like very scary for like on the media, and there's a lot of conflict that is happening in that region. And I think in the last like couple years, I think things have been a little better. But I had visited and wanted to like be able to like meet some of the people, and my guide is the guy in the bottom left, and he was very kind. And the moment we crossed the border from Oman into Yemen, he immediately use some of the money that like he received from other tourists and from me as well to purchase things for these children around the area, and to purchase, I think, things to support entire villages within this region of Yemen. And so that was, I think, something really great to see. And then here's another example of some of the projects that I was working on while I was traveling. And so this was in Iraqi Kurdistan, which is another place that I think is often very scary in, I think, Western media. And so while I was in Erbil, which is the capital of Kurdistan, I had met this local toy owner, which is on the left picture. And he was actually younger than I was. He had just inherited his father's like store, and he's maybe 20 years old at the time. And then when I told him that I wanted to be able to help some, I think, the displaced peoples within Iraqi Kurdistan, he really wanted to be a part of that project. And so I told him I had $100, or not 100, sorry, a couple $100 to spend to do that. And so he wanted to match me and just give so much more than I think proportionally that he had. And so we purchased a lot of toys and things, and we went to the Harshem refugee camp, and he was also really happy to be able to serve some of his people and some of the children who are definitely less fortunate in this area as well. And so this was another project that I had done. And here is the Pacific Islands. And so one of my, I think, favorite experiences during my travels was exploring the Pacific Islands. And the reason I say that is because out of the 14 Pacific Islands that are recognized as sovereign by the United Nations, I had stayed with local people in 11 of them. And those people I had met just randomly off the street, or just like randomly at the airport or something like that. And I was just extraordinarily fortunate to experience such hospitality that I've never seen anywhere else. And so in the top left picture, that is my host family in Tuvalu. And I still keep in touch with the woman that is my host mother, Pama, and that is her husband on the left. And they were just so kind. And Pama also happened to work at the Ministry of Health in Tuvalu. And so when I told her that I wanted to volunteer and do some work at one of the hospitals, she was able to get me connected there. And I volunteered at that hospital for a little bit, and I assisted with some research, editing, and some of the small administrative tasks that they needed to do. And then on the right, I believe that was in Samoa, another country in the Pacific Islands. And I stumbled upon a local hospital, and that provided care to the guy that I was staying with. I had just met him randomly as well, and he was just so kind and wanted to learn more about my culture and wanted me to experience his culture. And this is where like he got his medical treatment, was just this random health clinic. And so I was able to do some volunteer work there and provide some of the donations as well from my GoFundMe campaign as well. But yeah, the Pacific Islands were just incredibly amazing, and the people were just incredibly kind. And so this is in Indonesia, and this man, he was working at the Gaya Dewata Foundation, and it is a nonprofit organization in Bali that works to destigmatize HIV and AIDS within vulnerable populations in the community. And so I was connected to this organization by a college professor. And she had introduced me to this organization, and I volunteered there for about, I think, a week as well. And a lot of the work that I did was just, I think, participating in meetings and coming up with ideas or events to help raise awareness of HIV and things like that. And so that is another place where the donations went for this fundraising campaign. These pictures are taken from Pre in Thailand. And so there was, I think if you guys have the opportunity to see the GoFundMe page, there is a video that was posted that the University of Virginia took for me to talk about my story. And an older professor from the University of Virginia, he had connections. He was a physician and had a lot of connections to people in Southeast Asia. And the surgeon that you see there, his name is Dr. Lak, and he was one of the mentees of this physician. And he had seen my video, and he reached out to Dr. Locke for me to come visit and to shadow him and to help him in the operating room, as well as doing some volunteer work. And so that was a really cool opportunity as well. And those were just some really great memories. And he was my host father as well when I stayed with him. And he helped show me around. He taught me a lot about healthcare within like this town of Pre in central Thailand. But I learned a lot as well from here. This last one is from Cambodia, and I had gone to one of my friends, he's originally from Cambodia, and his mother had a lot of connections to local hospitals and clinics. And so I did some volunteering at the Angkor Children's Hospital, and was, I guess, just helping out some of the local physicians, attending some meetings. And that was the first stop of my, this trip of volunteering. And so, yeah, here's where some of the donations went as well. Okay, and so I know I'm going kind of all over the place in terms of my story, but very, very originally, the reason why I wanted to embark on just traveling in general and I guess experiencing the world from a different point of view was because in high school, I had gone to Kyrgyzstan for 3 years during the summer, or sorry, every summer for 3 years, I went to Kyrgyzstan to help run a sports camp for local students and orphans. And I think something that was really meaningful to me was being able to engage in intercultural exchange. And I think that's something that the East and West Learning, like the organization that here is very passionate about as well, right? And so being able to go to Kyrgyzstan every summer to meet these like children who honestly all have very, very similar passions and desires and hopes and dreams as any other children, even in the United States. They all just want to play sports, and their dream is to become a soccer player and all these things, or a football player. And so seeing that for the very first time in high school, I think was something that informed me that what I wanted to do with my life was build intercultural bridges and learn from people from all around the world. And so this is a picture from of some of those children that I work with and some of the translators and other volunteers that I was with. Okay, and so I just wanted to share a couple of some like small stories just to talk about the goodness in people and how incredible they were during my travels. And so this guy, his name is Gert, and I met him in Albania back in 2018. And during my travels in Europe, one of the things that I did, because I didn't have very much money, I spent a lot of time backpacking and sometimes sleeping outside and sleeping in I didn't have accommodation for the night, maybe. oftentimes perhaps I just didn't have that much money to spend on food or things like that. And so when I had visited one restaurant, I was just using I got a coffee so I could use their Wi-Fi, so I could do some work and take some classes, but I didn't have that much money. And so I asked the cooks in the back if they had any leftovers for food, and they didn't really understand the concept of leftovers. And so at first, like, and there's also the language barrier. And so they just gave me they're like, okay, 1 second. So they go back to the kitchen and they come back with a pile of bones. And I'm like, I'm not sure if I can eat these bones. And I think there's some communication. They didn't really understand what I was looking for in terms of the leftovers. But I explained I was looking if they had any extra food for me to eat. And so Garrett was one of the cooks there, and he was a 16-year-old boy back then. And when he understood, he was like, oh, okay. And then he went back, he told me to sit down, and he made a huge pizza and gave me a bunch of salad and a bunch of random food on top of on the pizza. And I didn't expect him to make from scratch this the food. And then when I told him, oh, I didn't mean for you to make the food. I do have a little money if you like, I can give that to you. And then he said, no, this is for you. You're a traveler. And we just spent the next like hour or so just talking about like the things that I've been doing and like what he wanted to do in life. And so that was just I think a very good example of like a complete stranger showing incredible kindness to a traveler. And so he is someone that I remember quite fondly. And right now he has his own kids. And I'm not super sure what he's doing, but it seems like he's able to travel and do some of those things as well, which is great. This boy's his name is Edwin, and his dream was to be a singer, and I had met him on one of my field excursions in Ghana during my semester at sea, and this was at a children's home. In which like the children's home, their mission was to save like children, like child slaves in the region, because some people kidnap children in the region and then have them do free labor for them. And so the mission of this organization was to, I think it's called the City of Refuge. They rescued these children and find homes for them, give them education and things like that. And so we were learning about their mission when we visited. And I connected with Edwin. That was one of the ukuleles that I had purchased in Hawaii, and I gifted him the ukulele because he really just loved it. And we like sang for a little bit, and it was just a really great opportunity to connect with someone who has very different life circumstances, but still very similar passions and hobbies and things that I do. So that was a great experience as well. Okay, and so I also wanted to share some other like images of just beautiful, beautiful places that I think I've just been so fortunate to have been able to visit over the last few years. And so obviously there is the component of wanting to meet people and experiencing different cultures and foods. But definitely one other reason I really want to travel was to see the wonders of the world and see how incredibly beautiful our planet is. And so this is a very unique place called the Danakil Depression in Ethiopia. And I think it's one of the only places like this in the world. Here I went during one of the summers, and it's one of the hottest places on average, I think, in the world as well. And I'm not sure who uses Fahrenheit or Celsius here, but during the summers, it was in the 120 degrees for Fahrenheit, which is almost, I think, 50 degrees Celsius. So it was really hot, but it was an incredible, incredible experience in a very unique place as well. This is a volcano that I was able to hike to in Guatemala, which was also just an incredible experience as well, and a wonderful adventure too. I think one of the really incredible things that I've had the privilege to be able to do, like I mentioned earlier, was to visit a lot of places that a lot of people don't really expect or think about. And it's in these places that I think I've experienced, I think, some of the most kindness and some of the most hospitality. And so one of those examples is in Kabul, Afghanistan. And it's just an incredible, incredible place, and very beautiful, very rich, full of culture. And I had originally gone in 2019, and that was before the Taliban had taken over. So I would not necessarily recommend that a trip there now, due to the Taliban being there. But if things ever clear up in the future, I think it is such an incredibly amazing place, and the people are super, super kind, and the food is amazing as well. Here's a beautiful lake called Big Almaty Lake in Kazakhstan. And this is one, I think, the most beautiful moments, I think, in my life was on a little boat ride in Micronesia. I had just gone to visit Micronesia, to visit these, I think, very, very old ruins. But unfortunately, those are ruins that a lot of people don't really know about, because Micronesia is not a very popular place for people to go, but nonetheless, still very beautiful. And so I had met a local police officer who happened to have a private boat, to take around the areas. And so he invited me to go with him and his wife to a little island where they were doing a retreat for local children. And so I got to join them, and experience island life there. And then on my way back to the main Micronesian island, it was sunset, and this was just the most incredible sunset. And I've felt that if I had died then, I think everything would have been worth. I think I lived just a very fortunate and beautiful life, and I think that was one of the moments where I had realized that. Like I mentioned, in the Pacific Islands, I stayed with my host family here I had written Tuvalu here, but it's in a country called Kiribati. And so this was a great experience as well. I was also fortunate to be able to swim with whales in Tonga, which is an incredible experience as well. Here's a hike that I did in Norway, in the incredible, incredible fjords. And this is called Trolltunga. And this is in Petra in Jordan, and in Mount Fuji in Japan. Oops, sorry. I think some of these pictures are a little cut off. Sorry. Okay. And here is a temple that I was able to see in Myanmar. And then something else that I was fortunate to do. One of my dreams as a child was to do, was I love dinosaurs. And so I wanted to be a paleontologist. And so I never really got the opportunity to do that in my life. And so last summer, I reached out to a bunch of paleontologists from around the world and asked if they needed any assistance with any digs or any excavations or things like that. And I wanted to volunteer and be a part of, I guess, to try paleontology just for a little bit, and to satisfy my inner child dream. And so I was very fortunate to be able to go to Montana last year, which is a great place to do paleontology. Some of the most famous and iconic fossils and dinosaurs have been discovered in Montana. And so I was able to get in touch with a paleontologist who was doing work there, and he invited me to stay for a couple weeks. And so that was in the Badlands of Montana. But I think in terms of overall pictures and mini stories, that's all I have for right now. But I am very happy to talk more about anything else if you guys have any specific questions. But yeah, thank you for listening to me ramble on about everything.